Grab your coffee and get cozy because you are listening to Fika with Vicky, live from home.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika. Today we are going to be discussing Pierre Boulle's novel, The Planet of the Apes. Originally written in Boulle's I'm sorry. I'm just waiting for the okay that this is up there and running live. But big breath. Originally, Erie Lake says we're go. So I can go. Originally written, and so to say, originally written in Boulle's native language of French, it was published in 1963 and translated into English later that year. As an interesting side note, it came out in the UK in 1964 under the title Monkey Planet and has spawned 10 movies, 2 TV shows, comics, countless novels. The first book movie being released in 1968. So we're just going to put a picture of the one that I read up there. And there we go. But why? Why was Boule's world so captivating? What about it has kept us interested for over 60 years? I'm going to get into that in a bit with my ideas and my thoughts. But in the meantime, the comment section is open. So please share your ideas, whether they are from the book or the movie. It doesn't matter. And here is where I give the official warning. There will be spoilers. So even though the book is almost 60 years old, his book is over 60 years old and the movie is almost 60 years old. If you have to run away, if there are things you don't want to hear, now is your time to do them. And I'm going to just change this up a bit. And that's how we want to do it. When you're learning new things, these things are bound to happen. So why? Why was The Planet of the Apes so popular? Well, I think perhaps the fact that this author also wrote The Bridge on the River Kwai in 1954, and the movie that followed it in 1957 won 7 Academy Awards helped. I mean, people were just waiting to see more of his work. But I also think the timing of it was perfect. Okay, it was the 60s. Hi, Ben. All the way from, you're in Wales right now, right? It's good to have you here. It was the 60s. And we were looking at the middle of the Cold War. The world had been given the power to destroy itself. Until this time, we had thought that power only belonged to gods. But we also know that with great power comes great responsibility. And we were just beginning to learn about that responsibilities and the fallout that could come otherwise. I was thinking about putting a mushroom cloud there, but I think that this was not quite as negative. Television had taken a hold, and we could watch the rise of civil rights, decolonization, the rise of feminism, and even political debates while eating dinner. Travel was becoming easier, and World War II had given people the thirst to revisit the places where they had fought during much more peaceful times. And people from Europe brought new cultures to North America. So Immigration was going up, prosperity was going up, but there was still this stress that was starting to inflict itself upon society. The world was growing smaller. And with our interest in space travel, the universe was growing smaller as well. But knowledge was getting bigger. In some cases, the more you know, the more you ask. But in other cases, the more you know, the more space you have to imagine scary things. As Dickens might say, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. But it was definitely the best of times for speculative, dystopian, and science fiction, even a satirical look at the world's hierarchy, such as Boule's. Now, I'm going to give a brief biography of him before we start because I always think an author's life reflects in their writing. But the man deserves a huge, 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 huge biography. I just can't fit it in. I can't do Mr. Boulle justice. So he was born in France and lived from 1912 to 1994. He studied science and became an engineer. He moved to Malaysia and became a plantation overseer in 1938. He was a soldier during World War II, trained as a spy and a saboteur, and worked as a secret agent. He was then a prisoner of war from 1943 to 1944, at which time he escaped and rejoined the British Specialist Forces. Obviously, the man has witnessed a lot of stuff, and being a keen observer of life, it was only natural that he should become a writer. I mean, what else would he do with all of that? So, we got the Planet of the Apes. Now, there are a lot of differences between I made these amazing little cue card things and I forgot to put them up till this point. Okay. So there are a lot of differences between the novel and the book. I'd like to say it's completely different, but it isn't. There are some similarities and you can see how the basis grew for that. So the first thing that really struck me after the opening, of course, but this all goes together, is that in the book, the world is much more modern. I'm going to quote it by saying the planet was inhabited. We flew over a town, a fairly big town from which roads radiated, bordered with trees and with vehicles moving along them. I had time to make out the general architecture, broad streets and white houses with long straight lines. However, in the movie, we get a much more primitive world. And why is that? Because according to an interview I watched with Charlton Heston, the studio just didn't have the budget to add all the cool space stuff. So they made it more primitive. This also meant the beginning had to change. Because in the beginning of the book, there is a lovely couple named Jen and Phyllis who are leisurely sailing through space on a vacation. But in the movie, it starts with the three astronauts waking up and then their shuttle crashing into the water. So because of all the other primitive scenes, you couldn't have Phyllis and Jen traveling through space, sailing even. They used a sail that was powered by the sun. A little bit of Boulle's engineering ideas, I think, there. You couldn't have that soaring through space. So it began, that's where the changes came. Another big change is that in the movie, the people are clad in Tarzan type garb. But in the book, they're completely naked. And I think we can just put that down to social rules and family entertainment. And the names were changed. Ulysses in the book, the protagonist becomes George Taylor, just to make it a little more relatable to the movie-going audience. So we're back to Jin. So in the beginning of the book, Jin and Phyllis are sailing through space and they find a note in a bottle. And the note says, I am confiding this manuscript to space, not with the intention of saving myself, but to help perhaps to avert the appalling scourge that is menacing the human race. Lord, have pity on us. That is where we begin. So I get most of my facts from Britannica Online, simply for simply because growing up, we had the stack of them on our bookshelf at home, and there's this whole nostalgic thing, and I'm like, I'm going there. So I just want to let you know. As far as opinions go, I tend not to read a lot of other people's opinions because I don't want to be orangutan. Even though in real life, I think orangutans are very cool with their whole solitude thing, loner thing going on. But in the hierarchy that Boulle presents, I'd much rather be a chimpanzee. So I'm going to forge and experiment with my theories and see if you guys agree or have different ones. I just want to give a hi out to Robin this morning. He's here, and Distinguished Monster. And Dave, I am not monkeying around. These are apes. Okay? I just want to point that out. And we'll be getting into the imitation of apes later. Okay, so I just mentioned the hierarchy. Within the Planet of the Apes, we have 3 major groups. We have the gorillas, who are the grunt workers, the police, because they don't have any soldiers, because there's no war, because the whole world is one government. They are the hunters, and they can even be the aristocracy. This is the interesting thing about gorillas. All of the different groups work with each other. All of the different groups work with each other, and so you can be anything. But in general, the interesting thing about the gorillas is just that they go from grunt workers to the aristocracy. They pull strings. Now, I'm going to say this is because understanding the working class of apes, they excuse me, they know how to pull their strings. And it is even rumored that the person who runs all of this behind the scenes is a gorilla. So, because they know what those people want, they understand them, and they're going to give it to them. So, they're also great salespeople. They run things. I'm not particularly fond of gorillas in this, even though I'm supposed to love everyone. The orangutans are, Zira would Zira, the female chimpanzee, would describe them as official science. And that's partly true, but they also show up in politics, in the arts, in literature, in academics. The thing with them, and I'm not sure if you can be in politics and a spiritual leader, but the thing about them is they try to keep everything the same. They read these books, they memorize them, but if somebody said, if they had always believed that the sun revolves around Earth instead of the other way around, they would want it to stay that way. They just don't want any mistakes being made. This is the way it is. We're going to keep it this way. It's safe and we're liking it. The chimpanzees are the scientists. They are the researchers. They sometimes get ahead of themselves, and they are not always kind to their specimens, but that's who they are. They make more of the creative moves in this society. So that is the hierarchy. Now I'm going to do a summary of it and come up with some of the themes that I think are there and my opinions of them. And please, if you have opinions, share them with me. Okay, so in the book, and I'm going to concentrate on the book here, so you can throw in any differences you find along the way with the movie. I would really appreciate that. So these astronauts wake up do not crash into the water. They land on the land, and they get out of their shuttle, and they're exploring, and they see this beautiful girl. And I'm bringing that up because I have an idea about that later on. Robin, it is very interesting and it is very important with the themes. And we'll get into that more later. Okay, so they see this beautiful girl, but she doesn't speak. She seems frightened when they make facial expressions, and she just growls at their clothes. Okay, this is the way it is. But they get closer to her, which ultimately means more humans come out, and they're animals. They're not wearing clothes. They're not talking. They're aggressive. They rip all their clothes off. They go over and totally destroy their space shuttle. So now they're stuck on this planet, not understanding what is going on with these people, thinking perhaps, it's a strange jungle society, as people thought of remote villages at that time. But then they are hunted down by apes. They are drummed out like people do with hunting. The apes are dressed as the aristocracy on a hunt. They're shot. They are shot like they are foxes. They are shot like they are geese. They are shot like they are deer. Then the rest are captured in a net, and they are taken to a party. The apes are having a hunting party, and some of the females even cut souvenirs from the human's hair to put in their hats, as one might from the feather of a pheasant. So we are seeing here the relationship between animals and men. And it's interesting to note that at that time, Boulle was interested in experiments being done to communicate with apes, with monkeys, with many animals. And so he was interested in that relationship and that dismissal that was happening between the people and the animals. So that being said, Ulysses / George finds himself in a research facility because he has been deemed to have special qualities. And the girl he had met earlier, Nova, is also there. And of course, he wants to talk to them, speak to them. And honestly, at this minute in time, I can't remember if he was injured. I think he could speak in the novel immediately after he could speak. He wasn't his neck wasn't injured. But he did have a friend that was killed and another friend that was missing. Dr. Antel, Professor Antel. And so he's there, he wants to speak, he sees all of these humans, but when he goes to speak, the humans growl at him. And so we are now introduced to Zira, and she, of course, is a chimpanzee professor, as she is in the movie, and she starts to take a special interest in him. Now, it was brought up that in the book, that the reason why, because if you watch the movie, if you read the book, research is so important to these people, who they are, where they come from. Why is that? And it's sort of brought up that apes do mimic. They do mimic other people. They copy. And so, because a lot of apes' interactions with humans was in research facilities, was in shows or zoos, they would see humans as being very clinical and doing the research. So they were continuing on this research to see where they came from. So we have that idea of mimicking what came before, and mimicking being very inconducive to growth. We just keep doing the same things over and over again. So Ulysses hanging out. I just want to call him George. Ulysses hanging out there and trying to convince everyone that he is different, that he can speak, but has nothing to prove that, because it's all been destroyed, his clothes being ripped away. He's accused of just mimicking. Isn't he cute, trying to speak like the people? And he waits, he bides his time. Now, and he starts to write notes and do things like he did in the movie. Now, in walks, so Dr. Sayus is brought in to check out this interesting specimen of a human, and he's not happy. He's not happy at all. And so as they try to do tests on him, he just, watches the other apes other humans get shocked, holding on to the bars. So he walks away from the bars and sits down and shows them that he can get himself out of any of the experiments that they give him. They experimented on him with bells, like Pavlov's dogs. They experiment them. So once again, this experimental idea, I think the book makes us look into the way animals are treated even more than the movie does, because even more than the movie does. I had a different banner for this. Just a second. It is. It is very much horrifying to picture ourselves in that place. And that is what happens. Even to the point where he is forced, because they understand that he cares about Nova. He is forced to breed with Nova or have her given over to another another man, and he doesn't want that to happen. He wants to keep his dignity, he wants to keep his humanity, but he finds that slowly slipping away. He finds that slowly slipping away, and as many of the other people do. I'm going to look into that in just a second. So he mates with Zora. I mean, he mates with Nova. And this is what really, aside from the fact that the humans are. See, I'm more upset about the animals that we treat badly than the humans that are being treated badly. I think, and this is what the book does to you. But I think there's a bit, the 60s, I'm thinking there's a bit of, I'm not sure what is going on here, but I really, really dislike the protagonist in certain places. And in this aspect, I do. So he goes and after this happens, there is more of an understanding between him, Zira, and her fiance, Cornelius, also a chimpanzee, much higher up on the research ladder. And they allow him to go out. Zira starts taking him to the park. He can't go to any museums or anything, but she starts taking him to the park on a leash. He is a pet to the outside world for any. So during that time, he's talking to Zira. He's learning to speak Simian. He's learning to read Simian. They have philosophical conversations. They talk about these scientific ideas. And then and Zira has even smuggled some books for him. And then he goes back to Nova and, becomes embarrassed in front of Zira about Nova's ability. She can't speak. She can't relate. And he starts treating her horribly. He starts treating her horribly. And I'm just thinking, I know. Whereas, okay, this is the whole point. He scares her with the flashlight that he is given to read the book with, and he slaps her. He slaps her to get away from him so he can read, so he isn't bothered by her. And so I see this in two ways. One, I see it as, do we forget where we were? Do we forget those lesser than us when we start to move up in the hierarchy? There he was once treated like they treated men. And then suddenly he's this special new novelty. He's getting attention. He's getting to learn. He's getting to feel good about himself. He begins to think that he is the savior that is sent to save all of mankind on this planet. And he's treating Nova like garbage. And so I think about the science fiction group of authors, and more as I look into them, they have not been exactly respectful to women. Because they suddenly have this power? The other idea is that he is portraying a much more modern, as I said, feminism was rising. Women were in the workforce. That has much more, due to their need to have them out working during World War II, and they liked it and they stayed there. And so is this the idea that he is impressed with the woman that he's working with? He can talk to her and he can do those things. But the woman back at home in the cage who can't speak to him on that level because she doesn't have that understanding is just to make babies and go sit in the corner and be quiet and be given a sugar cube once in a while. I don't know, but I'm not really happy with Ulysses at that point. Not happy at all. So then all of this is going on, and the orangutan, the gorilla's like, whatever, we don't care. This is not important to us, what happens with this guy. It's not making us any money. And that is what the gorillas like to do as well. Hunting humans was all the thing. Selling humans for research was all the thing. There was an entire industry built up around that. And was that being done for entertainment, for education? Was the world not moving forward because people enjoyed that? Or was the world not moving forward because they were told they enjoyed that because it was making a lot of money and it was a lucrative industry? So we see how people in charge in this book, and obviously what Boulle had seen, were still pulling strings of the people around them. So they decide, okay, maybe we're going to believe that this guy is from outer space. Maybe he's not the kind of humans we have around here. He's a special kind of human. He acts like us. And isn't that the thing? Acting like us is all the most important things. Don't worship differently. Don't speak differently. Don't dress differently. For heaven's sakes, wear clothes. Actually, I'm kind of big on that one myself. But so they had this conference, they had this hearing, and the orangutan tried to shut him down, the orangutan. But he pulled through, he had a speech, and so he became a special human. He was given an apartment, he was allowed to go to parties, he was just famous. Tailors came in and made him some clothes. He forgot all about Nova. He was going up in a big, big way. And so that was pretty exciting for him. And he was pretty full of himself because he was rising in the apes hierarchy. So we come to the fact that, he's doing experiments himself on humans. He wants to get them to talk. They can talk. They have everything they need to talk, but they just won't talk. They've just lost any desire to talk. I think this is because talking got them into a great deal of problems before the apes took over. But they've been trained for so long, it has not been part of their experience for so long, they don't want to talk. And I have a feeling there's a reason why they don't want to do a lot of things. So we'll get to that later. So they don't want to talk. And he's getting, frustrated by that. He goes to a natural museum, much like the Royal Ontario Museum. I'm sorry, if you're out of the area. And he finds his friend that had been killed, as a specimen in this museum, stuffed people. He finds the professor and Tell, but even though he can't find a mark on him, he is acting like the other humans. He's just hanging out, taking his cube of sugar when he gets it, and living that life. So he takes off on an archaeological dig to find out where he comes from. What will they find? What will they see? And they do find a city. And within that city, they find a doll, a human doll. And much like the movie, there is a human doll. And it's dressed nicely, not the way a toy human would be dressed. Is cared for. And it says the words Papa, which are the same in French, the same in Simian, the same in many languages. And this this is a determining factor which the orangutan wants to destroy. The chimpanzee stops looking for answers. He knows he's gone further than he should for the society. All of these things, because if man was there and they just mimicked him, man could return. He could take over again. So that fear had been installed, and why the orangutans had been hiding news all of this time. He goes back. He finds out that Nova is pregnant. His parental instincts come around. People are people. The apes are wondering if this baby will talk. What does this baby mean? Could he be creating a whole new human race? So they're in danger. He's in danger. And Nova and the baby are taken to a secret lab. He's frightened. He's frightened for his baby. He's excited that he's having a baby. All of these things are going on. Sarah sneaks him in to visit them. And in the meantime, he is being taken on a tour of the experimental facilities. And so imagine watching the experiments that are done on animals, done to other humans. He's very unhappy. They are given drugs to stop some of the pain, unless the experiment is about pain. It's just, horrifying. So he is then taken to a secret room where Cornelius and another chimpanzee have actually succeeded in making humans talk. One parroting, much like a parrot would do, but the other, whether it was from just almost a recorder of different lies of different people when the apes gained power. And so it wasn't through. And so there was the testimony of just a regular homeowner. There was a testimony of a research assistant. There was a testimony of a trainer in a circus, as well as others. And within these testimonies, it would appear that the people just gave up. I'm scared of my gorilla butler, so I will hide into my room and allow him to take over my bed and my food and my everything until I'm eventually forced to leave my house. I was finding a cure for cancer, and the robots, that comes up, the apes. I'm not sure if I'm fighting apes or artificial intelligence right now. The apes were tied her down and gave her cancer, and then started working on a cure themselves, so she didn't feel she had much of a chance, and she just let go and went out into a beach community and was just sitting there passing time, waiting for her time to come, but not feeling bad about it. There was the circus trainer who was locked in the cage herself and forced to eat, forced to do tricks, and would get her sugar cubes, and actually was quite happy about it because she didn't have any responsibilities for the animals or anything. And this is what I feel is the entire basis behind this book that maybe at the time in the 60s people weren't aware of, but looking back now, I think he has a genuine insight, because in the 60s, this too much information And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. We should have information, but too much information. All of this has happening in the world that we are finding out within seconds of it happening now, not in the 60s, but it has grown now. Watching those political debates, having to, in our heads, know this is right or this is wrong for me. And all of this mental stress while not being able to do anything about it, not being able to do anything physical, adrenaline running without an output. This is a kind of stress that exhausts you. We all know it. We've all felt it in recent times, in other times. And so these people were so tired of that once given the opportunity to live in the wilderness with no clothes, not speaking, not finding a desire to do just about anything was preferable to them. As the intellectual professor he had found his answer for the world. It was just to let go and be. And so it wasn't a bomb that destroyed the world. It was an apathy that overtook the human race because it had just been too much. Too much. And I and maybe, and this is what I'm reading into it, and of course it is reading into it, having read into it, but I just think if that is if that is true, and not just my opinion, it's amazingly insightful. So this just happened. This is interesting. Robin says, where is my little guy there? Okay. Show. I think there's a natural fascination in all of us where we wonder what the world would be like without us around, or we were no longer the dominant species. I I, I think you mean if we weren't in control. What would happen if we weren't in control? And I think that is in a world, the world would get on very, very well after all the nuclears. But anyways, there is that natural idea. What would happen if we weren't in control? What would happen um, if the others took over? And I think that's I think that breaks down to different cultures as well as different species. We like to be in control. We like to because that is seen as the top. You know, we are always fighting to be at the top. And we sit there and say, we don't have a hierarchy. We all get along. Everyone is welcome everywhere. You can do any job you want to. The American dream. And that's just not the way it goes in reality. The American dream quite often takes some money from mommy and daddy to get started. So yes, this is true. We want to know what it would be like because we wouldn't be in control. I think, Robin. Anyways, distinguished monster. Yes, the illusion of control. I mean, life is going to take us wherever we go, and someday the apes might. You know, I'm probably going to get shot because I am not going to run. All right, I'm too old. Quality of life is too important to me. I'm just going to say, there we go. Apes, do what you will. So this is the thing. That being said, they decide that they're going to have to get rid of all three of them. Zira, Cornelius, everybody has too much information that could destroy their world and they wouldn't be in control anymore. So but not to allow them to just be, because Zira is a very caring person, ape. We should not put caring. Look at me. I have to start think as a very caring being. And she convinces Cornelius, who is not so caring, but does not like the relationship that is building between Ulysses and and Ulysses and Zira, and so they're going to put a satellite up. They are they were going to put a woman and a man and a child in that satellite, so they just switch it to being Nova. The baby's name is Sirius. The baby can laugh, can cry like a human, and is mouthing other words so they know he's going to cause trouble. Intelligent people always do. Problem solvers. So he they replace them. They take the satellite up, get them on the ship, and so they start back for Earth, which is going to be a 2-year journey. And this is how the story ends. Not with the iconic Charlton Heston shout, damn you all to hell, that we all remember and see as the ending of the Planet of the Apes. But with Nova, Sirius, and Ulysses heading back to Earth, getting to Earth, and finding, getting out of the spaceship as military walk up to them, and the military is a gorilla. So somehow they get out of that mess. That is not, and they end up back in space. I mean, they can grow plants on this ship, they can stock it up. And so they're just biding their time, and they send out this bottle. And the couple has now finished reading the entire story, decide that it is fiction, because how silly could this story be? Because they're chimpanzees, and there's no way humans could rule anything. It's just fiction. So there's meant to be satirical. It wasn't meant to be, as I think that the movie, and that's how that ends. The movie took on the physical realities of the book. Boulle didn't actually write the screenplay, and somewhere I read, and this is just me talking, so somewhere I read that he was really opposed to that ending, but it made cinema history, so I'm not sure how it could have ended in any other way. And that would be in a world that apes ran, perhaps. I don't know. So the point is that this book is satirical. It is a look at the world as we know it, and we know it as being run by humans. And we don't want anybody. So individually, we don't want people taking over our household. We don't want people to take over the way the world is. All I'm trying to say in this, without getting to, is that this applies. This, like so many other books do, this applies to this world as well. I want to be in control. And the gorillas are pulling the strings. And I just am very upset about the portrayal of the orangutans, because I know they're much cooler in real life, and the treatment of animals. So this is my first try on doing something like this. I think next time I'm going to give people a little longer heads up in case they do want to read the books or look into it more, to comment. If you're watching this later and you want to comment, if you want to comment below, please do. I will answer them, because I love to discuss these things and what other people's thoughts are. But all in all, people get up, as Ulysses did, and starts treating Nova horribly. We treat animals. I don't know. It just leaves you with a lot to think about. So, I'm turning off comments. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Next week, we're going to have a guest. Yay! I'm back to guests. And 2 yays because it's going to be author Rachel Patterson. We always have a fantastic time. There's a lot to catch up on with her. We're going to be discussing Hedge Witch. And so come out and join the party because it's always a party when Rachel's in the house. Until then, may your coffee be hot and your story sweet. Thank you for listening. We're going to end the stream.